Hi, this is Patrick Henry, the CEO of QuestFusion with The Real Deal Live. We're here today with a couple of really cool entrepreneurs that are over in Europe. Martin Garov and Marin Garov and Julian Samardziev. They're the co-founders of Dulo, which is an innovative apparel company where they'll tell us a little bit about it, but they're doing shirts for entrepreneurs that don't want to go to the dry cleaner and they don't want to iron. And they've gone through quite a process, initially starting this as a side gig. And they're both software developers, which are people that are very near and dear to my heart. They've created a lot of tremendous companies that I've been involved with. So I love software developers. So why don't you guys just tell me a little bit about Dulo and where you got the idea and how you got started?
First of all, thanks, Patrick, for the opportunity, and really looking forward to that opportunity and to this show as well. I think it's our first live guest appearance on a show, so we're really excited about it. And yes, we are based in Amsterdam right now, in the good old Netherlands. And yeah, so very briefly, Dulo is basically a company that's dedicated on making clothing for people who don't want to deal with the hassle involved in looking great. And we're starting with a dress shirt. It's something that both of us like to wear from time to time, even though we're software developers. And in today's world, as a software engineer, you know, the standard is probably a hoodie or just a simple t-shirt. But from time to time, you need it either for an important meeting or eventually while you rise up in the ranks, you got to be more presentable as well. But there was something that was always stopping us, and that was the hassle involved in getting ready in the morning. And I don't know about how much time it takes on average for people, but for me personally, it takes me about 15 minutes to iron a dress shirt. So at one point I just started wearing, just ironing the collar and the cuff, and the rest put a sweater on to hide the horrible wrinkles that goes into it. And yeah, we kind of wanted to solve our own problem. And eventually we decided to go with this idea because both of us are originally from Bulgaria, which is in the eastern part of Europe. And it's a country that has traditions in manufacturing of clothing and textiles production. And we just wanted to see if we can realize this idea, but within our own country, so that first of all, we can also give back something to the country, but also leverage the network that we have, the language, the ease of access to the market. And basically, we've been in business for the past 6 or 7 months, selling openly to customers. And before that, we spent 1 year in product development. We went over 70 prototypes with actual customers. Before we actually decided on a final model that we would be producing and selling online.
Great. So are you guys wearing Dulo shirts right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
They look good. They look really good. So you mentioned you spent a year in trying to figure things out. How did you kind of rapidly go through trying to figure out what would sell, what wouldn't sell, kind of understanding the market as well as understanding the manufacturing?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, well, the market, we kind of knew that there's a few companies that are trying it out in the US, and they were growing, so we kind of had a proof of concept that the market is maybe going to grow, but there was no one really doing it in Europe. I think there's maybe a few small companies starting up now, but yeah, so we thought there was a market for it, and like Marin said, we're solving our own problem, basically scratching our own itch, and then yeah, we didn't know whether we can make them in Bulgaria because we kind of knew that there's an industry for that, but we didn't know whether they would be able to make that category, which is a dress shirt, with the performance fabrics. So it was a very interesting trip back home. We took a week off from our day jobs, and we basically traveled around the country just speaking to people who were within that industry, and we said what we wanted. Most of them were confused. They didn't really know what we were talking about. Why would we do that? Why would we replace cotton, with a new material? But luckily, we ended up, one of our last meetings, it was with a manufacturer that we ended up working with. And then from then on, we shook hands, and like Marin said, we did 3 rounds of prototyping, just getting about 20 shirts each, sending them out to all kinds of people within our own network and outside of that. And we did 3 rounds of that, basically iterating on the feedback from each and every one of the people that got a shirt.
That's cool. So you really used a lot of the kind of lean startup concepts and, kind of product development things that you learned in the software world applied to, this apparel business. So that's awesome. So
Yes.
how did you go about getting the feedback? Did you use surveys? Did you use focus groups? Did you what were some of the mechanisms that you used to get feedback as you're iterating through the process?
So we split it in about 3 rounds, and the first round was really to very close friends and family. And for that, we just collected immediately the feedback by approaching the people. So I think we made initially about 25 shirts or something. And this was close relatives and friends that we have on call or on a messenger somewhere, just immediately asking. The idea was that first we go to those people because we can quickly collect the data that we wanted to collect, to improve, and then do a second batch with those improvements, and then go into a slightly wider audience. Now, this wider audience, we actually started collecting due to our approach to document the whole journey of building the company. So from day one, we decided we're going to use the strategy to document the process of building the company, because at the end, it's a great historical document for ourselves to reflect on, whether things go really good or things don't go as planned. We can always reflect and see on that. What's ended up happening is that while we were documenting this on our blog and our vlog, people started to connect, and other entrepreneurs connected with this messaging and what we were doing as well. Through on our Instagram channel, for example, people were reaching out and we were very, very actively participating. So we kind of expanded to a second group, which is a little bit outside of our network. So we had our first testers who were in the US that we sent shirts to. We had people all around Europe as well. And that was, again, like a group of 20 people. But I think I would at least consider them more impartial, because those are not relatives or friends who might tell you just because they want to be nice to you that it's a good product, even though they don't like something. And after that, the final iteration was just minor, very small details that were really just for us to see and to choose between different options.
That's terrific. So, you guys, on your first month of official revenues, you did 2,000 euros, which I think is great, as an initial product. How have you been ramping revenue since then?
Well, I think until now, for about 6 months, we got about, I think, 5,000 or 6,000 euros. Because what happened is we had a very successful first month, and by far the month that we launched in November is still the highest month. Then came December, Christmas holidays, then came January after the Christmas holidays, and things really started to go a little bit low. And we were wondering, okay, what are we doing wrong? What's happening here? And then you start digging and talk to other people. And we figured out something that apparently is also very common in the software world, that once you build a product, you have people who are initially excited about it. They know, they have the whole context. And in our case, those were all the people who were following our journey until the moment we launched. They came and started, they bought immediately. But it's a dress shirt. It's not a product that you buy every month, for example. So basically, after the first month that was really high and super exciting, then we faced the reality of actually doing the marketing and spreading the word out. And since then, we've been really trying many different strategies all the time. And we're starting to just now see really the fruits of our labor come to fruition, because it's very... It takes a lot of time and takes a lot of effort to position a product that's still unknown, that's in a slightly higher category, that's from different materials. And it's now we see now things that we've been doing over the past several months to start add up and create this groundswell of people who are really interested about what we're doing.
Yeah, for example, just to add to that one, our last month was our strongest month. So we saw the rise of launch, and it kind of dipped, and then we kind of saw slow growth, which I think is expected. And then we're also seeing that translate into the numbers of our viewers on YouTube, or listeners to the podcast, or readers on the blog, or people on Instagram. So I think it's a very slow and organic process, mostly because we are bootstrapping the whole thing. So we don't have any cash to throw at marketing. We're not even doing any marketing at the moment, because we're waiting for our new photo session images to come in. So it's been a very slow, just reaching out to people, talking to people one-to-one, and then we're seeing that slow growth curve happening.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's definitely not uncommon to get that initial boost in revenue with some pent-up demand. I think the other thing about the apparel business too is it has a tendency to be very seasonal. I don't know if you know Brian Smith, but he is the founder of UGG Boots in Australia. He's a friend of mine, and his story is amazing. You should pick up his book. But just kind of the whole every year was a grind, getting the boots built, and it was a very seasonal business, and it was for surfers and trying to identify how to get beyond that surfing niche and things like that. So just things he learned, talking to his retail customers, which eventually talk to the end customers. You get a little bit more of that direct feedback in an online business, but yeah, it's an interesting thing with these seasonal businesses. And I've been in some of those too. When you're in consumer electronics products, it's extremely seasonal, and you've got strict cutoffs. Like when we were selling the Panasonic and Sony, if you don't get your chips into their design by October, November, you miss a whole year. So there's very strict landing zones around those things. So one of the cool things you guys mentioned, which I really like, is this whole behind the scenes, your entrepreneurial journey. I really like when entrepreneurs do that. And I think you build this kind of tribe, this affinity group around yourselves when you have the vulnerability to do that. How has that worked out as far as actually generating customer demand, kind of with your podcast and with the things that you've done relative to the entrepreneurial journey?
I'll pick it up.
Go ahead.
Well, basically at launch, our biggest, the biggest portion of our revenue came from actual organic people that hopped on the journey before we launched. So it wasn't that much friends, because the price point is a bit high for our friends. But then it was people that were following along, and then they knew about us from us documenting the whole journey, because we've been documenting maybe about 1 year previous to launch. So there was a lot of content, and we'll be speaking about because we showed the first samples which were yellow, then we showed the second samples which were white. So and then from then on we just had white fabric. So we were showing white shirts for months on end. So they were excited to see the colors coming at launch. But yeah, it's been it's been very beneficial at launch, and it continues to be, because it gives us a constant stream of organic and authentic content.
That's awesome.
It's a very interesting distinction here as well, because kind of a lot of the content, and that's we talk about between each other all the time, is that a lot of the things that we're doing right now, people don't care and probably shouldn't care at the moment of us telling them what we did this week or how we're thinking about marketing, because currently we're not anybody yet. So we haven't really reached that position that people will go back and say, oh, they had this marketing genius idea and that's how they did it. Currently, we're still really fighting to create a position even on the market. So the content is really has a lot of value if you're in the trenches as well yourself, and probably you can relate a lot to it. That's what I noticed. Like if I talk to other entrepreneurs, and that's majority of our target group, they really like that part. But I would say for the average viewer, let's say of the vlog or YouTube, that's not going to be something that interesting at this point in time.
Yeah, makes sense. So you mentioned kind of as we were preparing for the interview that you're from a business model standpoint, you're running the company more as a media company as opposed to an apparel company. Tell me a little bit about that and the thought process behind that, and what does that mean?
Yeah, well, it's the main thinking behind this is that today this product, we think, is a product that tomorrow Hugo Boss or a very big brand, the Zara, the H&Ms, they can come up with exactly the same product that has the same properties, and they can make it cheaper, faster, at scale. At the end, what's going to differentiate everybody, that's the brand. And in today's world with all these tools, you have to personally, as a person, I have to see myself as a brand, you have to see yourself as a brand, and you as well. And at the same time, then it is the business, but not just the brand, but a media company brand, because we have all these tools and all these networks. Everything is here in our devices, and we can broadcast, we can live stream, we can do all of those. And at the end of the day, this is much closer to what a television station used to do than what an apparel business would be doing. And it's interesting because our content is not really about style, about how to get the best look for the season. They really are about how do you build a company, how do you find your first customers, and answering questions around those topics.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, do you guys have like a build to order type of mechanism, or you have to like make so many shirts, you know, minimum order quantities and things like that? How is that working from a business perspective?
Yeah, so basically the sampling period and the first batch, which was about 700 shirts, we financed from savings. So we have our inventory upstairs, which is the living room now warehouse. So we have those shirts that once we sell those, and then from the profit of that, we can start ordering the next batches. So if we want to go a bigger batch, or then somewhere along, even if we don't sell all of them, we can do a smaller batch, or maybe even a crowdfunding project at some point. But we currently have prepaid kind of, and we have the inventory with us. So we just kind of need to sell it, and then from those funds, we'll generate the next batch.
Yeah, every order that comes in, we take a shirt ourselves, we find the right size, we write the note, handwritten note, put it in the nice box, ship it ourselves. It's all just the two of us doing the whole thing.
Makes sense.
And
yeah.
Just to add on top of that, the nice thing about also having a full-time job at the moment as well is that we can all the revenue that comes in from the company, we can reinvest back into the company, because the full-time salary is paying all the bills and stuff. So that's how we're approaching it.
Makes sense. So what, you know, I want each of you to answer this question, and this is probably our last question we have time for, but what's been your single biggest lesson learned for our entrepreneurial audience out there going through this process over the last year and a half?
For me, the biggest lesson is that it takes much more time than I would expect it from the very beginning. So learning patience is something that I'm still learning to practice. For me, this is the most important lesson, is that things take much longer time than you expected. And after that, just trust the process and show up every day for work and do the boring things. And there will be 5% of 100% of the things that you do. And those 5%, that will be a delighted customer, a testimonial that would fire you up to go over the 95 less interesting, boring things that you have in the day. That's my answer.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And just not to repeat myself, but the other thing I think that we're kind of starting to figure out that's really important is to really find your niche. But by niche, we really mean a niche, because we started off, okay, we're going to make a product, then we're going to speak to all the people that wear a shirt, then it's too broad, you're speaking to no one. Then we went, okay, we're going to speak to all the, maybe to the active people that wear a shirt, but to, you know, familiar with the fabrics, but then that's too broad again. So you just have to really narrow it down, be really specific, and just stand behind the message, stand behind that niche, and just be really loud about it. And then that's how you get your true people.
I love it. Those are definitely two things I coach in my practices: patience and perseverance, and focus. You know, I say is the riches are in the niches. You know, you've got to, especially as a young company, you really have to focus on that micro economy, and hopefully you have a broader market that you can penetrate over time, but you've got to establish that beachhead. You know, if you try to go too broad too soon as a young company, it just doesn't work.
It's a thing of resources and lack of focus. Yeah,
absolutely. But great to have you guys on the show. We'll try to have you back, you know, down the road and continue to follow the journey. How can people get a hold of you or buy the shirts?
Well, the easiest place is to go to our website. It's weardulo.com. That's weardulo.com. And we're shipping internationally. We have a free standard delivery to everywhere in the world. So there's no barriers when it comes to that. And we are on social as well, everywhere. Our handle is @weardulo, like our website.
Awesome. Terrific. Well, thanks, you guys. This has been really fun, and good luck with the entrepreneurial journey.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Patrick.
All the best.
It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.